kingdom is drawing near. And in the first 4 chapters, Matthew introduces us to the kingdom bringer. It's Jesus, and we learn who he is and how he's born and about his baptism and temptation and kind of showdown with the devil. And then in chapters 5 through 7, we learn about the kingdom teacher as Jesus preaches the Sermon on the Mount and talks about who the kingdom's for and what the kingdom looks like here on earth. And then in chapters 8 and 9, Jesus has been the kingdom demonstrator. He's been demonstrating the kingdom and showing us his power and healing and compassion and grace for the people of this world. And now we're in chapter 10. And in chapter 10, we're going to learn about kingdom training. This is an entire chapter where Jesus is now sending out his disciples, and he's sending them out in kind of like a training mission. This is like boot camp for disciples. And so we're going to learn a little bit about kingdom training today. This is how our passage begins. It says, he, and that's Jesus, called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. And then the list comes. We're going to get to that in a minute. I want to point out a couple things about his intro. First of all, it says that Jesus called his disciples. And that word called there in Greek is a little more complicated than what we see. It's the word proskaleo. It's a 2-part Greek sort of verb, and it means kaleo is to call, and pros means towards, to call towards oneself. It was sort of a commissioning word. It's a very personal and intimate thing. It literally means to call to one's face. And so Jesus, we see here, right before sending his disciples out, sending them out into the world to kind of with the mission of the gospel, to do some things for him, he calls them to his face. He says, come to me, stand before me, and receive this very personal commissioning. This is a very intimate personal send-off. It's not an email. It's not a note. It's not a text or a tweet or a virtual poke. This is Jesus getting face-to-face with his disciples and sending them off intimately. And that's the first thing I want us to understand about sort of kingdom training. It's personal. When Jesus sends us out, when he sends out the 12, when he sends out you and me, he wants to do it from a real personal, intimate place. He doesn't just sort of say, get out there, and it's kind of this ragtag sort of distance thing. But no, he sends us out straight from his face. We go straight from him into the world as sort of his personal ambassadors. And it seems like a simple point, but I think it's significant because if you really were to think about yourself going out into the world, into the workplace, into your friendship groups, into the schools, wherever it is God would send you, and you thought of those venues and you thought of yourself as a personal ambassador of Jesus, that Jesus was sending me personally to those people and to those places, I think it would maybe change our posture and our attitude towards people in this world a little bit, wouldn't it? It'd be sort of like if you were face-to-face with a mentor or someone you really respected, or like maybe one of your parents, and they said in a real serious way, hey, I got something I need you to do. I need you to go to these people for me on my behalf, take care of this business, and I'm just asking that you would take care of that. It'd be a situation where you take that sort of a call real serious. It'd be real significant to you, and that's what Jesus does here. This is a very personal calling for Jesus and his disciples. The next sort of nuance of this intro is that right away in verse 1 it says he sends the 12 disciples, and then in verse 2 there's a shift and it says, here are the names of the 12 apostles. So in one verse we've got disciples turning into apostles. And we think about disciples and apostles and they sort of are these big churchy titles. Disciples, apostles, those are the guys that get like imprinted on stained glass and stuff, right? The big dogs, kind of these big offices in the church. Well, in this gospel and in this day, those were just common words to describe people. And an apostle was simply, a disciple was simply a learner. Just someone who learned, someone who followed the teaching of another person. And an apostle was common as well. It was just a messenger or someone who was sent. And so we kind of see these words describing the training of Jesus and his guys. Learning and sending go hand in hand here. They go together. They're interchangeable. And I would argue that learning and sending are both part of the training process Jesus is putting his disciples through. And here's the thing. You learn the most when you're sent. This is not a classroom-only sort of training. This is on-the-job training. You want to learn about what it means to follow Jesus? get out there. You want to grow in knowledge and understanding of Christ? Go. If becoming a disciple of Jesus is what you desire, then be willing to be sent by him. But I talk to so many people in the church. Some of you have said this to me, and I just need to squelch this attitude. You know what, Pastor Dave? I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready to serve. I'm just not ready to minister. I'm just not ready to do the work of Jesus. Why? I just don't know enough yet. I just don't know enough about the Bible. What if someone asks me something and I don't know the answer? Friends, if you want to know, if you want to grow, go. It's like Dr. Seuss' sermon here today, right? Kingdom training is on-the-job training. It happens in places that you're not quite ready for. It happens when you don't feel as prepared as you'd like to feel. It happens when you're not as comfortable as you'd like to be. That's when transformation occurs. Outside of the safe places. Character formation happens when you put yourself out there. Real growth occurs when you engage the unfamiliar. And you know why that is? It's in those places that you have to exercise faith. And that's what it's really all about, right? It's in those places you have to trust. That's when you have to give up pretending that you are in control of your life and step away from the unknown and rely on God. And then growth occurs. Amazing. You know what keeps most people from doing that? Fear. Most people, even Christians, good Bible-believing Christians, won't grow because of fear. More specifically, fear of failure. Fear that they won't be able to do it, that something will go wrong. And so instead, we cling to safety and security and the familiar, and we miss out on the learning of taking that next step, that next risk, that move that will allow us to grow and become who God longs for us to become. And you know what? It's not just people who kind of fall into that trap. It's churches too. In fact, churches are notorious for getting comfortable and predictable and safe. I was just listening to one of my favorite pastors talk about leadership, and he was talking specifically about leading a church with a lot of history, leading a church that had been around for like 50 years or more. You know any churches like that? Right. And he was saying one of the things that naturally happens over time in the church is that churches move from mission to maintenance. From mission to maintenance. You see, at the beginning of church life, when a church first starts, all they have is mission. Mission is the focus. Mission is what unites. Mission is how decisions are made and direction is set. But then as mission moves forward and people get reached and programs get established and staff is added and facilities get built and systems get implemented, people get comfortable. And they start to fall into routines. And they want to sit in the same seat every week. And if someone sits in their seat, no, I'm just teasing with some friends here. They get comfortable and they get settled into routines. And here's the thing. Listen to this. See if this doesn't sound familiar to any churches you know. Maybe ours a little too, and this is a little painful. Protecting and maintaining the church becomes more important than the mission of the church. Protecting and maintaining the church becomes more important than the mission of the church. See, it's a real subtle shift. No one wants that to happen. It just happens over time, real slowly. But the church can easily become a place of stability instead of a place where constant faith and trust and growth are happening to advance the gospel. Friends, we must not let that happen. Not in your life, not in this place, not in this body, not here. Friends, do not come to Ventura Missionary Church if you are looking for a safe, stable, sterile, secure place to check the religion box off in your life. If that's what you're looking for, find another place. We do not want that here. The mission of this church, foremost in front of anything, above all else, is to live and share the transforming love of Jesus. You see, we want transformation. We're not just killing time here. And you know what? When I talk about transformation, dig deep in your soul and see if there isn't something in there that just starts to sing. Because I believe that something deep down in you knows that you need it, knows that you want it. And the idea of God moving you forward and helping you to become who He longs for you to become, and for our church to become who He longs for us to become. There's something that resonates down in your soul, and it sounds so good, but it's not easy. It takes risk. It takes challenge. It takes stepping out in faith.